Hello, my name is Emile Tompa, and I'm the Director of the Center for Research on Work Disability Policy. Welcome to today's session. It is entitled Mentorship, Advancement, and the Promotion of Persons with Disabilities. We have 5 panelists in this session. The first panelist is Dan Samosh, Postdoctoral Fellow with the Center for Research on Work Disability Policy. Dr. Samosh received his PhD in Organizational Behavior from Queen's University in 2019. Dan uses qualitative and quantitative methods to explore research questions on the career advancement, leadership, and workplace inclusion of persons with disabilities. Our second panelist is Kelsey, Relationship Manager at Lime Connect. At Lime Connect, Karen is responsible for managing and building corporate and post-secondary educational institution partnerships integral to the success of Lime Connect. She also focuses on attracting high-potential students and alumni to grow the Lime network in Canada, and she acts as lead and coordinator for the active Canadian volunteer-based Lime Connect ambassadors. Our third panelist is Reno Michel Hache, Project Manager of MentorAbility Canada, which is part of the Canadian Association for Supported Employment, or CASE for short. Reno Michel is a published author who is PMP certified with a Master's of Adult Education. He co-authored the Hire for Talent Employer Disability Awareness Toolkit. He has also facilitated competency-based initiatives incorporating concepts of essential skills and the Blueprint for Life work designs to support integration of youth at risk in the workplace. Our fourth panelist is Jamie Burton, Vice President of Corporate Development, Dolphin Digital Technologies. Dolphin is a communication technologies firm recognized for the use of technologies to tackle social issues. Jamie is a business leader for employment of persons with disabilities and continuously demonstrates to other businesses that diversity and inclusion is a business advantage. Her motto is lead with opportunity and prepare for potential. Our fifth panelist is Mahadeo Sukhai, Head of Research and Chief Accessibility Officer of the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, or CNIB for short. Dr. Sukhai is the world's first generally blind biomedical research scientist. Prior to his work with CNIB, Mahadeo served as a research scientist at the University Health Network in Toronto. Mahadeo is principal investigator and co-author of Creating a Culture of Accessibility in the Sciences, a book based on his groundbreaking work on access to science within higher education. For this panel, I have posed 3 questions to the panelists which they will answer in their presentations. The first question is, what are the key challenges experienced by persons with disabilities in their effort to advance their careers? The second question is, what can employers and other stakeholders do to support workers with disabilities in realizing their potential and advancing their careers? The third question is, what best practice recommendations would you give workers with disabilities, employers, and other stakeholders? So thank you very much and take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Samosh. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Toronto and also at the Institute for Work and Health. And I'm going to talk to you today about some research that I conducted on the subject of disability, career advancement, and leadership, specific to the Canadian context. This research comes from my doctoral work, and really it stemmed in large part from a frustration and recognition that a lot of our research and practice focuses on entry-level employment for persons with disabilities or just getting a job, without much of a focus really on what happens after someone is in the workplace, and specifically on career advancement and entering into higher level leadership positions like manager, senior manager, and so on. So what I did was I conducted a series of studies. The one that I'll talk about today is basically where I interviewed a bunch of leaders who have disabilities, who are often in high level senior kind of positions, and explored with them what factors facilitated their career advancement. So we'll get into that today. So to begin, we can talk about what the problem is that we're dealing with here. Fundamentally, there are a series of career advancement barriers that many persons with disabilities often face when inside of organizations trying to move up through those organizations. One kind of way of conceptualizing those barriers of advancement is this glass ceiling metaphor. And the idea here, right, is that a person at some point will not be able to advance any further due to social barriers. Those can be attitudinal, educational, environmental, technological, and individual as well. And just in case, some of these slides I won't go through in great detail what's written on them, but I will be making these slides available after, so please feel free to send me an email or whatever, and I'll make sure to get these to you. So beyond advancement barriers, there are also barriers when someone is in a leadership position and has a disability. One way of looking at that is called the glass cliff. This is the idea that it's easier to lose a leadership position. It's easier to fall from that position when you have a disability due to things like a lack of opportunity, a lack of organizational knowledge and time and other resources, as well as lack of support at the organizational and peer level. And another version of barriers that occurs not so much during advancement from a junior position to a leadership position, but while in a leadership role again, is this notion of glass partitions, which comes from Rolston and Williams in 2014. And the idea here is that after entering into a leadership position, after winning, hard fought often accommodations, there can be a fear of losing those accommodations, as well as a fear of disclosure for some people in a new environment and potential negative treatment to follow. And what this can do is keep the person in one role. So it kind of results in these glass walls surrounding the person, and they stay in the first leadership position that they enter in. And we know from organizational research and just practice that in order to move up through an organization, you need to move laterally. You need to explore, various leadership positions at the same level before you often move up. But what this does is keep someone in the same role, and it can ultimately lead to the person being pushed out of the organization because they aren't getting the same experience as other managers or supervisors and so on in their workplace. And so an example of this comes from one of my participants who made the statement, once we get a job, we tend to stay in that place because they've accommodated us. Switching jobs, you have to go through the whole accommodation process again. So what is the potential solution to all this, right? We've got these barriers to entry, these glass ceiling kind of barriers, and then these barriers to maintaining or advancing, right? These glass cliff and glass partition barriers. Well, in the research that I did, one of my participants came up with a metaphor, which is called the three-legged stool. It came from Michael McDonald, and it's a really meaningful metaphor, and it explained a lot of the experiences of the people who I spoke with. And these were individuals with various experiences of disability, as well as working in the nonprofit, for-profit, and government sector. So a wide array of experience to speak from. And what this metaphor captures is that there are really three critical components that are necessary to the advancement of one's career. The first are career self-management strategies, the second, social networks, and the third, organizational and societal factors. So when thinking about these, the key is that you can't just have one, you can't just have two, you need all three to succeed. So this is the three-legged stool kind of concept in play. And importantly, organizations can foster and support the development of these various pillars in order to help someone succeed, advance their career after they have entered an organization. So I'm going to go through each of those three pillars one by one, really briefly, just due to the time that we have. But the first one is career self-management strategies. Fundamentally, these are behaviors and attitudes that the individual takes in their approach to their work. So some of these behaviors are learning communication skills, disability advocacy, giving it 150%, these kinds of things. And then the attitudes that were commonly spoken of with the people that I spoke with were taking a positive attitude, seeing barriers as contestable challenges, something that can be changed. They just need to find the right factors, the right individuals, the right structures to help them manage their way through barriers and navigate those barriers, and also things like building confidence and self-determination. So as mentioned before, you can't just have one of these pillars, so it's not enough to say that the person has a really positive attitude and then therefore they will succeed and enter a leadership position. We also need these other factors, the next one being social networks. So these can be broken down into two categories, those internal to the workplace and those external to the workplace. The internal ones are really important and probably very important, especially to our discussion today around mentorship too. Having inclusive managers, colleagues, and employees access to challenging tasks, which then allows one to build skills and then really build up one's career, and as well as access to formal and informal mentorship were really, really important. critically there, often informal mentorship came from an individual's manager. And the people that I spoke with would often make the comment that they felt very lucky because they had a manager who didn't see them as a disability, but an individual, and then therefore gave them that informal mentorship, which helped them advance. So direct supervisors or managers are probably really critical in a lot of organizations and worth considering as we kind of build this discussion out. And importantly, organizations have a lot of potential influence over internal networks. So things like coaching, mentorship programs, holding managers accountable for their kind of diversity and inclusion practices, as well as succession planning, are all potential examples of things that organizations can do to foster internal networks and access. Next, you got external networks. I won't focus too much on that today, but if you are interested, the paper that I published on this delves into this much deeper, so I'm happy to share that with you. But basically here, friends, family, acquaintances, and so on are really important to many of the people who I spoke with in terms of building their disability identity, modeling skills, and also in some cases supporting access to employment. So our last pillar are organizational factors. This can be broken down into three categories: policy and procedure, programs and funding, and social systems. It was really critical to the people that I spoke with that their employers be flexible and responsive and also be proactive. So engaging in things like universal design or practices similar to universal design. Now, what I'll focus on briefly is this idea of critical mass of leaders with disabilities. This is the third component of this pillar, which are the social systems. One of my participants stated, you need a critical mass because otherwise people think, oh, well, they are the exception. And this participant was referring to themselves being in a leadership position and the requirement for more people to be in leadership roles with visible or invisible disabilities, but employees being aware of these individuals so that they can also see themselves in their leadership and believe and feel that they can actually advance through their organization. So what are the key takeaways of all this? Well, we've got these very extreme barriers that are the glass ceiling, the glass cliff, and glass partitions, but we shouldn't see them as necessarily absolute if those three pillars of the three-legged stool can be in place. So those three facilitators, those categories of facilitators, are career self-management strategies, social networks, and organizational and societal factors. And very importantly, organizations of various forms as well as individuals can focus on supporting all three of these pillars, not just one, not just two, but all three, if the interest is in career advancement and leadership. So with that, one of the key points that my participants frequently talked about was the need for flexibility and proactivity in organizations. So I thought I would comment on that again. As well, this whole critical mass kind of idea of having enough representation and leadership so that people see themselves in that leadership was very important. And last, because this is a brief presentation, I spoke kind of broadly about disability, but it's really important to remember that personal and social experience of disability is very, very diverse. And so we should recognize that in practice as well, that you can't just have a one brush kind of for all experience. And the last comment that I'll make is to focus in any form of initiative on the concept of nothing about us without us. That being, if an organization is planning on implementing something based on this kind of model of the three-legged stool, facilitating career self-management strategies, social networks, and organizational and societal factors, it's very important that current employees or other individuals outside of the organization with lived experience also be a part of that process. So thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I'm the Relationship Manager for Line Connect, and it's my pleasure to share some information with you today about our organization, a little bit about disability, and about disclosure. So as I mentioned, I'm the Relationship Manager for Canada. We are a North American organization. My responsibility is Canada, and we're an organization focused on rebranding disability through achievement. So that is our mission. We're focused on attracting, preparing, and then connecting individuals who are either pursuing or have graduated from university. They could be already into their career, who also have some kind of a disability. And what we're helping them with are scholarship opportunities, leadership programs, internships, and full-time careers with our partners who are some of the world's leading corporations. Our network, and so anyone who joins our organization to avail themselves of our resources, we refer to as the Line Network. So people can do that at no cost. And so we provide our network members with different kinds of tools. So a lot of them that are focused on development and career preparation. We also offer them connections and ultimately self-confidence that really helps them to achieve their dreams. We also, on the partner side, provide support in attracting, hiring, and advancing employees who happen to have disabilities. So the work that we're doing in collaboration with our corporate partners is really helping to break stereotypes, and companies of other outside of our corporate partners of many sizes, different industries, and really to help them understand the full value of the perspectives that individuals who have disabilities can bring to their workplace, the talents and strengths that they bring. So a little bit about disability. And this study was conducted in 2017 by the Center for Talent Innovation of corporate employees, so white collar employees. So 30% of those had some kind of a disability, and yet only 4% identified themselves as a person with a disability to their employer. And while that in of itself may not matter, if the person or the people who have chosen not to disclose happen to need an accommodation, then unfortunately, they're probably not setting themselves up for success. And so we strongly recommend that people, if they are going to need an accommodation at work, that they do share information about their disability. The other thing that's important to note is that the majority of disabilities are not visible. So you can see by the chart that only 13% are visible almost all the time. So how do we go about doing what we do? Well, we first of all attract individuals to our network. So through the relationships that I have with university partners, professional associations, disability organizations who all help to promote what we do to encourage people to join our network so they can take advantage of our resources. We bring them and attract them to our network. And then once they're members of our network, they're able to access our resources so we can help them be prepared for career opportunities or to progress in their career. So we offer things like webinars, workshops. We do a lot of things, and it actually did a lot of work and a lot of presentations, webinars, etc., that are COVID related. Of course, because we're all working virtually, and it looks like we're going to be doing that for quite some time. And probably we've changed the way that we work well into the future, that a lot of that work is going to be relevant going forward. So people can avail themselves of all of those webinars, whether it's being prepared for an interview, for networking. We also offer some career coaching, so many different resources for people to benefit from. And then finally, and the ultimate goal is to connect them for career opportunities with our corporate partners. And so we do this in a couple of ways. So one is through the recruitment events that we host. So prior to the pandemic, that would have happened in person. Of course, that's not possible these days. And so we've switched to virtual, and we've had several. So we've got our fourth virtual recruitment event coming up. Very, very successful from a candidate perspective and the partner's perspective. An opportunity for people right across Canada to participate, whereas the in-person, of course, would have been driven by location. So lots of different opportunities to connect. People can also apply for jobs by doing a job search through our website once they've logged into their network account. So the many ways. And we also offer a couple of scholarships. So that's something else for people who are either studying business related. So there's the BMO Capital Markets, or for people who are studying something technology related, we have a Google Scholarship. So lots of benefits. These are our partners in Canada. So you can see we have 6 very large companies, and we're looking for, we continue to look for others. So we expect that the number of partners will expand over time. But you can see that we've got some great companies that we're already working with who have quite a variety of career opportunities. So it's a great partnership that we have. So that's what I wanted to share with you today about Line Connect. If you'd like to get some more information, I hope you'll check out our website, www.lineconnect.com, or reach out to me directly, karen.kelsey@lineconnect.com. Thanks very much for your time today.
Good day, my name is Reno Michel Hache. I'm the project manager for MentorAbility Canada project. MentorAbility Canada is a national initiative from CASE, funded in part by the Government of Canada's Opportunities Fund. This project started in British Columbia many, many years ago with the intent of creating opportunities for persons with disability to integrate and to learn more about different workplaces. The whole idea behind MentorAbility is to create matches based on interest, based on career goals or career objectives, matching an individual that experiences disability or difficulty to integrate into the workplace, matches this individual's interest with different employers that actually operate within that sector or within that industry. We found that matching individuals based on their interest creates a natural basis for developing a relationship. So the idea stems from creating these opportunities, these one-of events that allows both an employer and the person, the job seeker, to experience real life moments into looking, what could this work mean for me? And also from the employer perspective, how can I broaden my capacities to integrate more people and to make my workplace more inclusive and more diverse, and doing so to create an environment so that the employer can develop their own skills and onboarding skills for the most diverse workplace and the most diverse opportunities for individuals to integrate the workplace. The initiative started, as I mentioned, many years ago, but it was framed within the DEAM events, which is the Disability Employment Awareness Month. This DEAM events happen in October, and the idea of MentorAbility was to create one-day events where there would be many employers receiving individuals experiencing disability, and this created an increased awareness within the community of employers. The opportunity that CASE received from our funders is that it allowed us to broaden the scope of this project and not only make it in one part of Canada, but allow these experiences to take place across Canada and throughout the year. At this point, this project is just past its halfway mark, and we are developing many activities, many resources to increase employers' disability confidence in increasingly integrating more and more individuals experiencing disability within the workplace. The project will end at the end of 2021, and we have provincial coordinators in each of the provinces recruiting and looking to distribute this opportunity or this program to offer to many service providers who have clients, many service providers who are in contact with employers, and using this strategy or this technique of MentorAbility, which is based on the experience and not an ask to hire a person with disability. So MentorAbility is non-invasive. It's a very soft way to approach employers, and it provides an opportunity for employers to broaden their experiences in human resources, onboarding strategies, and discovering new knowledge and new strategies to make their workplace more inclusive. So we all know that the present situation of COVID-19 and sanitary measures really modify the way that organizations have to deliver their services. Here at CASE, we were somewhat fortunate because we were already within a virtual environment, and we are now developing new protocols to create mentoring matches, but virtually. So we're still continuing to develop disability confidence, but we're also creating training. We're also creating opportunities for both protégés and for employers to use these new tools that we have to create these mentoring. And this leads to many success stories. We found that it's sometimes easier for employers to engage virtually as well as it is for persons with disabilities, with all the mobilities and the technology issues are being solved as we go. So the idea is that these mentorships based on interest and experience from the employer lead to employment. Although this project is not based on hiring, we don't have these as a direct output. We've had more than 10% success rate, as we can say, in hirings of following a match with a person with disability and an employment in the specific sectors. So this is very interesting because over the 120 matches that we've had so far, we have almost 10 to 15% of individuals that obtain significant and meaningful employment from these mentoring matches. So I hope this provides you with a quick overview of MentorAbility Canada project. I'm more than happy to receive your questions. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jamie Burton, Chief Business Development Officer for CCRW. I'm also the co-owner and Vice President of Dolphin Digital Technologies. Today, I'd like to share with you my experience in mentoring as the founder of Dolphin Disabilities Mentoring Day. Have you ever experienced a moment where you could see possibility, where you really had a genuine connection to being part of something that was just beginning and knowing that you were going to be part of it? I would suggest that's where we're at today. This is not a moment to sit back and relax. This is an opportunity for us to work together and figure out how we're going to impact the future of work and disability. And I believe, I genuinely know that mentoring is a big part of it. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about my experience, my knowledge, some of what the evidence says, and the opportunity for you. I feel very fortunate to be celebrating 10 years of Dolphin Disabilities Mentoring Day, and even more so with CCRW. We have a fantastic partnership because we have formalized our connection to understanding that it is critical to support both the employer and the job seeker in order to develop a successful model. Dolphin Disabilities Mentoring Day is a one-day mentoring event in October every year that matches mentees who are job seekers who identify as having a disability with mentors who are employees in the workplace. It connects talented people in a shared learning experience, investing in talent, and encouraging a new quality of performance. Dolphin founded Disabilities Mentoring Day because we'd attracted a lot of talented people and we couldn't hire all of them. So in a community of 1,100 other tech firms where we were hearing they could not find the talent they were seeking, it was easy to create an opportunity to share those talented people. So what became how to attract talent developed into more of an understanding of how to align our practical considerations with innovation and the need to demonstrate that technology can level the playing field. Dolphin is the first business in Canada to develop and implement a barrier-free hiring strategy for people with disabilities. We've learned firsthand how critical perspective, diversity of thought, diversity of experience and understanding is to really developing award-winning solutions. And by the way, inclusive designs make for some premium products. There's also the consideration, though, of how we can celebrate the varieties of human cognition. The challenge is to execute diversity and inclusion in consideration of what human resources actually is. It's that development to be able to create an unbiased methodology, an unbiased outcome, and an unbiased perspective to incorporate exactly that, a diversity of thought. The opportunity in career development is to cultivate the creativity and the mindfulness or resourcefulness that provides experiential learning. And that's where mentoring comes in. It is the best model of experiential learning in any circumstance. The reason is because the result of mentoring is a genuine connection. A connection to the person, certainly, but also a genuine connection to the understanding that it is critical to have diversity of thought and experience in order to develop advanced thinking, critical thinking. 100% of our mentors who have participated recognize Disabilities Mentoring Day as an important part in helping to promote the hiring of people with disabilities. But it doesn't stop at hiring, because businesses have come to us asking us to help optimize their existing staff. So when you look at models for maximizing the potential of all human resources, there's often consideration for diversity and inclusion, with diversity being a representative of community and ensuring that employees reflect that same community. But inclusion is more than that. It's about building trust and establishing a sense of belonging, a genuine belonging. And I would suggest that that's where mentoring can be maximized. Employee career development really is about being able to demonstrate viable models that access the talents of all or tap into the talents of all your team. There's also this component of it that's derived from necessity to be flexible and easily adaptable. It's pretty important in these days, and certainly in these current times, to build a resilient workforce that can adapt quickly, but not just in the skills structuring, to the actual business models, to be able to really understand that there is another value to be created here. It's not just your own personal productivity. It's how do you have influence and impact on the general community at work? How do you develop a culture of understanding that it's critical to include and have people feel that they are part? I often refer to this as the transition from being an observer to being an active participant. In a place where there's continuous learning, it's a lot easier to achieve that genuine sense of belonging and connection. But I would suggest that the diversity and inclusion aspect of that lends very much so to leadership development, because it creates active engagement. It has a focus on sustainable behavioral changes. One of the ways to achieve this would be in reverse mentoring, because reverse mentoring is actually a demonstration of inclusion. It has people reaching out to connect with others, to learn from them and share their expertise, but it's done in such a way that you're actually guiding someone towards their vision. And of course, during that process, there is the knowledge transfer piece. This is the component that will establish those unbiased methodologies I previously referred to. When there's that sharing, that connection, that genuine element of learning, you have the opportunity to maximize the outputs into unbiased methodologies. It's really important to recognize that this is one of the most critical components or impacts of mentoring. Mentoring facilitates opportunity to consider curiosity, to connect to new ideas and have an appreciation for the nuances that come with those ideas. You can also demonstrate your industriousness, and all these are ubiquitous traits for the future of work. There needs to be a greater emphasis on the journey of learning, on the actual journey of employment, with more focuses on the questions, not so much on the solutions, but actually attacking a problem and finding out variables, different answers, different resources required, unanticipated outcomes. Where are the gaps? Where is the greater understanding? Mentoring helps with school to work transition, with onboarding, with return to work modeling, with career advancement, and very importantly, and probably one of the most critical components, accommodation management. Companies that think carefully about how to foster and create mentorship opportunities will be more likely to retain the very best talent, attract new talent and diverse talent, and also be more capable of letting go those employees who aren't self-directed or motivated. Mentoring is a model for learning. It's also a model for teaching. And how do we know that? Well, there's evidence. We've collected stories over the years from those who have participated in Disabilities Mentoring Day. And it's their stories that have helped transition how we do our event, but more importantly, have helped transition their own internal practices and methodologies, and therefore have had impact on their own outcomes. We've measured our success by those stories of connection and learning, and very personal changes in perspective. I would suggest there's opportunity to learn more, and that's why I've already established the theme for next year's event: invest in talent, your future of work.
Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be here today to chat with you a little bit about some findings from a study that we undertook a couple of years ago, which led us to develop some understanding of the importance of mentorship and networking in employment and career advancement for Canadians with sight loss. In 2018, we undertook a project called the International Levels of Employment Study to understand the levels of employment for persons with sight loss in Canada and in our collaborating countries, Australia and New Zealand. We recently got word that ESDC is going to fund us to do a return to sample in winter 2021, so just in a couple of months, in order to understand the impact the pandemic has had on the employment outcomes that we understood and derived in 2018. Our objective initially was to accurately identify the level of employment, areas where people were employed, and barriers to employment for people who are blind or partially sighted in the participating countries. As we did the analysis 2 years ago, one of the key premises that we identified was that there was a bit of an equation at work: education, community engagement, and mentorship combined to lead to positive employment outcome. In this presentation, I'm going to focus specifically on that conversation around mentorship. I'm also going to touch on the conversation around community engagement and how it leads to social networks that can, in turn, lead to mentorship. So I'm going to start by telling you a couple of things. First of all, the overall employment rate in the study at that point in time was 42%. So 42% of Canadians with sight loss had a job. Today, the number is different because of the pandemic, and we've been tracking the number consistently and rigorously over the past 2 years, and so we have a good sense as to how it has evolved. Now, when we started to unpack where and when and how mentorship and networking could be important, we looked at this in the context of where you were working, whether it was a small to medium-sized employer of less than 500 employees or a large employer with more than 500 employees. And we also looked at it in the context of promotion and career advancement. So first of all, I'd like to tell you that personal networking is more likely to lead to employment in the context of an SME than in the context of a large employer. So disclosure happened prior to disclosure happening prior to being hired, or disclosure happening because the employer already knew of the sight loss, which is the personal networking piece, was much more likely in the small to medium-sized employer than in the large employer. Conversely, employees who work for large employers were more likely to disclose after having been hired. And so my employer already knew of my sight loss, 26% for SME compared to 18% for large employer, and disclosure before being hired, 39% for SME compared to 35% for large employer. On the other hand, disclosing after one was hired, 12% of SME affiliated respondents said they did that compared to 21% for the large employer. Personal mentorship was also much more important to being hired by an SME. So I had a mentor relevant to work. 42% of SME respondents said that compared to only 31% of respondents for large employers. My mentor helped me find employment successfully, 12% SME compared to 7% large employer. Compared to something like, say, participating in a formal mentorship program, only 8% for SME compared to 11% for large employer. The other thing is you were much more likely or much less likely to serve as a mentor in an SME at 14% compared to a large employer at 18%. The other interesting thing about this is that one builds one's social networks through knowing people, whether through volunteerism or through work. And so knowing people through work was slightly more relevant to employees in a large employer, because that gave you employment experience, and that gave you sort of job recommendations. But knowing people through volunteering was more relevant in the context of a small employer compared to a large employer. So if you were a summer student, you were more likely to end up in a large employer, 27% compared to 18% for SME. Extracurricular clubs, the same thing, 46% compared to 38%. Paid work at school, 18% compared to 12%. Paid work outside of school, whether it was related to your area of study or not, again, large employers were more likely to have people with those kinds of experiences. Community volunteering, on the other hand, 52% SME compared to 44% for a large employer. Let's turn our attention to opportunities for promotion for a moment. Only 19% of currently employed persons with sight loss were promoted to management positions. That's approximately 8% of the overall population of working age blind or partially sighted Canadians that we profiled. When it came to opportunities for promotion, folks in non-supervisory roles had fewer, one-time promotion, versus supervisory roles where they had 3 times promotion. Managers were more likely to have been mentees. And so having a mentor relevant to work, 50% if you're in a management position compared to 44% if you were not. Participating in a formal mentorship program, 14.3% in a management position, 10.6% if you were not. Mentor helping you to find employment, on the other hand, was more likely in a non-supervisory position at 16.3% compared to a management position at 13.3%. And the likelihood of serving as a mentor if you were a manager and a person with sight loss was 24.5% compared to 19% if you were in a non-supervisory position. Another interesting thing, mentors with sight loss are not very common. Only 7% of individuals, irrespective of their job status, indicated that they had a mentor with sight loss. Interesting thing about this slide is that what it tells us is that formal mentorship and informal mentorship are more likely to have occurred if you have gone into that management role. But those mentorship opportunities didn't necessarily lead to sponsorship, didn't necessarily lead to, I'm going to actually hire you, or I'm going to coach you in this space, as opposed to what was going on in the non-supervisory space. Managers also face significant barriers to promotion across the board. Technology barriers, workplace accessibility barriers, safety and emergency preparedness barriers, employer attitudes, and transportation. Employer attitudes was number 1, transportation was number 2, but by and large, folks who were in management positions experience these barriers at twice the rate of folks who were in non-supervisory positions. Now, the interesting thing is, if that's the case, why go through all the struggle? And the answer is actually rather interesting. The answer is because if you're in a management position, you actually have slightly more control of your destiny. And what that means is you have slightly more control over your ability to work effectively with accommodations and accessibility solutions in your job. And we saw this because managers had better access to technology aids than their non-supervisory peers. And those aids included screen readers, screen magnifiers, large monitors, custom computers, low vision apps, and closed circuit televisions across the board for all of these devices, some of which are really obvious symbols of living and working with a disability, and some of which are less so. Managers were more likely to have access to them than folks in non-supervisory positions. So to wrap up, what have we learned? We've learned that employment success is associated with a sense of personal agency, that establishment of a social network is associated with increased likelihood of promotion into management, that managers are more likely to have been mentees and mentors, and that people who work for SMEs are more likely to get their positions through personal networking and to benefit from direct personal mentorships. That gives us a way forward with respect to mentorship and how it works currently in the context of employment for people with sight loss, but it also tells us where it may not be working quite so well and where there's still work to do. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy to take questions.